I tried to get revenge on my liquid kid's guzzling sister, but she ruined her own life. When I, 29, was little like 7 years old, my dad cheated on my mother with my stepmom, Karen. After her divorce, my mom moved away and got married again. I was always under the impression that my mother abandoned me, and that's what my dad told me too. Karen had a daughter at that time who was 5, Mia. Mia and I were kinda close growing up. But when we both hit puberty, our personality was different. Mia was the typical girly girl. She developed beautifully. She was basically like Cassie from Euphoria. She would get all the attention. Even my relatives preferred her more than me. I was basically a nerd. I was interested in sports, but I was told that I do not look bad and I am very attractive and pretty in my own way. But I was overshadowed by Mia. My dad was someone who was an opportunist. Whenever he would see an opportunity for him to shine, he would take it. Even if it meant sidelining his own daughter. He saw that Mia got more attention than me, so he invested everything on her. I was kinda jealous. But I wasn't really that bothered because I believed if I did something good I would be appreciated. So, I studied hard and got into a prestigious university. That was the only time my father threw a party for me because I was the first in the family to do it. But Mia was jealous of it. So, anyways, during my last year of high school I started dating Tim, 30. He proposed to me when we were sophomores in college. But we decided to wait till our graduation. So one day during our semester break, I went to his home and I saw him effing Mia. I was shocked to say the least. I remember I was crying and screaming at him. I could never forget the smirk on Mia's face. That's when I knew Mia was a B word. So, my dad and stepmom knew about it, and guess what? My dad told me to forgive them. His logic: Tim fell out of love with me, so he fell in love with your sister. You should give them your blessing instead of being petty. I shouted back, of course you will say that because you cheated on mom. My dad and I had a screaming match. He told me he would disown me if I do not accept them and come to their wedding. I remember that I stormed off and I cried for days. That's the moment I realized I was alone. My dad didn't care if I was dead or alive. I started therapy after a friend of mine pushed me to it. It did help a bit, but in my mind I wanted some revenge. I wanted to be petty and make her regret it. I started thinking about what I could do. My initial plan was to wear white on her wedding day. But then I ran into Mia's ex, Jay. Jay and Mia have been one of those couples who are on again off again. Mia exploited Jay a lot. The last time they broke up was when Jay caught Mia flirting with one of his friends. But there was a lot of history. So, when Jay learned about Mia and Tim, he was a little angry. He kept saying he wishes he could just take revenge on all the times Mia has done him wrong. So, I had another plan. I asked him to be my +1 at her wedding. I know Mia still has feelings for Jay. It would piss her off. But we agreed that after that we would part ways. So when the wedding came, I was not in the wedding party. My dad was cordial with me because I wasn't creating trouble. So I went to her wedding with Jay and I was wearing a bright red dress because I read that red means you slept with the groom. It was also over the top. I might have made some heads turn. When Mia saw me with Jay, her face turned pale. I was purposely being very touchy with Jay, like whispering in his ears, touching his shoulder, dancing with him very closely. I swear Mia was just as red as my dress. I was also asked to give a speech. I kept it short. Thank God I do not have more sisters, otherwise Tim would have swapped Mia with one of them. You know he has a fetish of effing his fiancée's sisters behind her back. Me and Jay were asked to leave. The next day I was bombarded with messages and phone calls. I didn't pick any of them. As for Jay, he stuck to our deal and I never saw him again. After the wedding incident, I decided I should find my mom because something in me was telling me that she didn't abandon me. It wasn't hard to find her. I found her on Facebook and we started chatting. She is married and has 2 boys, my half-brothers. I got the real story from her. She didn't abandon me. My father won the custody case. He used my mom's past substance abuse to take away her visitation rights too. We reconciled and for the first time in my life I felt welcomed. I also met my stepfather and my 2 brothers. They are amazing people. Since then, I would regularly meet them. 2 years after the wedding incident, I met a guy, Andy. We met during an alumni program in our college. He also went to our college, but he was 5 years my senior. We had a lot in common. He was kind, sweet and very mature. He knows about my past and has been really supportive. He was better than Tim in every other way. He was charming and had a really higher position in his job. After 2 years my sister contacted me out of the blue and told me she was pregnant and she now wants to bury the hatchets. I was very reluctant. I was afraid that she would try to steal Andy away from me as well. But Andy reassured me he is not that weak. Honestly, I do wanted to meet Dad again. So, I gave it a shot anyways. I went on dinner with Andy. And to my surprise Tim recognized him. It was later revealed to me that Andy was basically Tim's boss. This is the fact I didn't know. My dad and stepmom brought me to a corner and said that my relationship with Andy is unacceptable because I'm trying to hurt my sister by dating Tim's boss. I told them to F off. My love life is none of their business. The dinner went sour. After that I got a drunken call from Tim that he is very unhappy with my sister and that he actually wants to escape. He never knew what he lost until he saw me with Andy. I ignored him totally. Then the phone calls didn't stop. First it was my dad telling me that me dating Andy is causing tension between my sister and Tim. I told him their marital life is none of my business. I got call from my stepsister who asked if she could come to my house and talk. I told her after the dinner party, I want nothing to do with any of them. That TCH didn't listen. Instead she went to Andy's office to convince him to talk to me. Of course Tim saw this and accused her of trying to seduce Andy like he seduced him. Long story short, Andy had to fire Tim for his misbehave. This caused even more tension. Tim became verbally abusive towards Mia and said his life was ruined because of her. They separated. Tim is trying to figure out how can he handle the divorce proceedings. After the Tim and Mia drama, my dad suddenly showed up in my apartment. He was bawling his eyes out that he caught Karen sleeping with his male cousin. He was devastated. So, I told him what he said to me when Tim cheated on me. Karen fell out of love with you, so she fell in love with your cousin. You should give them your blessing instead of being petty. My dad was confused. I further told him, well, you taught me this, remember? When I was sad about Tim cheating on me with Mia. You told me to forgive them. My father's face was rotten to say the least. Now I have 2 family members who are going through divorce. Tim and Mia tried to reconcile, but eventually they settled for divorce. My dad did apologize to me for what he did to me and Mom. I told him that he deserved what's coming for him and that I have no feeling left for him. Not even pity. If the time ever comes I might forgive him, but I don't want him anymore. He will not be walking me down the aisle. Andy and I are recently engaged. We are having a small ceremony with just close friends and family. I was only planning for a petty revenge, but karma got them better. My student became my roommate and then my F-buddy, MF. This is my account of something that happened a few years ago. It's mostly true except for some of the dialogue that I had to reconstruct to the best of my memory, contrary to what everyone else on here claims. No one is remembering exact dialogue years later, haha. Right out of college I got a job teaching high school. I was 22 years old and teaching kids who were 14 to 18. It was a great job. I love teaching and I'm pretty good at it. But I was advised early on to be very wary with female students. The small age gap between me and my students, coupled with the fact that I was single, could spell danger. Overall, I was professional with all my students. I had to be in order to get them to take a younger teacher seriously. As a human male, I couldn't help but notice if a girl was conventionally pretty, but I made it a point to never let my thoughts drift any further than that. Long story short, I taught high school for a few years, but like many people, I got sick of the administration, the politics, and the stress. I left teaching to go back to grad school. I got my master's and then decided to start a PhD. To my surprise, in my first year of my PhD program, Jenny, one of my former students, started going to the same school doing a master's. When I started teaching, she was a junior, so I knew her for 2 years before she graduated. She always struck me as reserved, but opinionated and confident. We were in the same department and ended up having a couple classes together. It was strange for her to talk to me and not call me Mr. N, but she quickly got over that and became fairly friendly with each other. We would meet up for lunch every now and then and I'd advise her on what courses to take and how to apply for PhD programs. The program I was in places a ton of emphasis on language acquisition as a means to further your research abilities. It's basically an expectation that you'll spend a summer or even a year overseas fully immersing yourself in language. The summer after my first year in the PhD program I decided to spend a couple months in Seville, particularly because my university has a close relationship with the university there and costs for housing would be significantly cheaper. I arrived in Seville and after a bit of trouble figuring it all out, found where I'd be staying. It was a small dorm building, just 3 floors, with each floor having a common area with a bathroom and kitchen surrounded by 6 small bedrooms. Because it was summer, the entire building was vacant when I got there, which was a bit of a relief. It was nice to have some quiet solitude to relax in. Those who have done grad school understand the importance of de-stressing. After a week, though, I woke up to the sound of one of the university administrators in the common area. She must have been showing a new student the dorms. I got dressed and poked my head out of my room and to my surprise, it was Jenny. The administrator was showing her and another woman I didn't recognize in the dorms. I jumped out to greet them, with Jenny apparently being as surprised as I was. Apparently she had plans to go to South America but they fell through and she ended up in Seville as well. As much as I appreciated the solitude, a friendly face in a foreign land is always a welcome sight. I had to go out to one of the library archives that day, but when I came back in the late afternoon, I found Jenny and the other girl, Grace, sitting in the common area drinking tea. I sat with them and chatted a bit before the 3 of us decided to go out and get a late evening dinner. While we were walking, Jenny began to joke about the 2 of them ruining the privacy I had for the previous week. I guess you have to stop bringing women back to the dorm room every night now that you're not alone, she said with a teasing smile. That joke caught me off guard. Although we'd gotten to be pretty good friends over the course of the past year, our conversations never veered away from academia and research. Yeah, you know me, a different girl every night, I joked back. Again, for those who have done grad school, you understand how the vast majority of us spend more time with books than we do with intimate partners. She didn't say anything else about it, but her broaching the topic stayed in my mind for a bit. I hadn't met anyone and certainly hadn't brought anyone back to the dorm in the week I've been here, but I had masturbated in the privacy of my room, and now I just have to be a bit more discreet about it. After the 3 of us ate and spent some time walking around the city center, we headed back to the dorm building. I changed into my pajama pants and undershirt to sleep in and headed out of my room to use the bathroom. Grace's door was closed, but Jenny was in the kitchen filling up a cup of water. She was wearing short cotton shorts and a tank top. To be honest, I'd never really thought of her sexually, but the sight in front of me was not unwelcome. I think she must have noticed my eyes wandering just a bit because she caught my eye and we both shared an awkward smile as I scooted past her on the way to the bathroom. The next morning I woke up to a message on the new group chat the 3 of us had made the night before to ease communication. Grace messaged to let us know that she headed out early to meet a friend of hers who lived nearby. I groggily rolled out of bed and went to the bathroom. By the time I was out, I saw Jenny in the kitchen making some coffee. She offered to make me some and I gladly accepted. We sat across from each other in the common area as we chatted. She was in the same tank top and shorts from last night, with her hair up in a ponytail. "So what are your plans for today?" she asked. "Well, I was going to bring a ton of women back to the dorm like I've been doing daily, but now that you guys are here, that's off the table," I replied sarcastically. She laughed heartily. "I know you're joking, but I also wouldn't even be surprised." I laughed it off and ignored what she was implying. Maybe being away from school and home was causing her to be more carefree. I didn't mind, it was just a new side of her I wasn't used to. Over the next few days we settled into routines. We usually all met up for dinner and hung out until late at night. Mornings start late in Spain, which was a nice change. One morning I woke up and, to be frank, was atrony. I hadn't masturbated since the girls had shown up. Although I locked my room door, I still felt uncomfortable with them being so close. But this morning I just had that undeniable urge. I started to touch myself, with cliché fantasies running through my head. But halfway through, I started to hear a faint sound. A light buzzing. I thought maybe it was something like an air conditioner, but that wasn't the sound the AC in this building makes. It took me a second, but I realized the sound was coming from directly on the other side of the wall. Jenny's room. I realized. She must be using a vibrator. She must not realize that the sound of it could barely be heard through the wall. I was simultaneously surprised and turned on. It didn't take me long to finish myself off, and I grabbed a towel to clean myself up. I got up and ran over to the shower while making sure the common area was empty. By the time I came out of the bathroom, I saw Jenny was now in the common area drinking coffee on the couch. "Hey, good morning, how's it going?" she asked. I was having trouble looking her in the eye, knowing what I heard earlier. "I'm all right. Are you having a good morning?" "Yup," she responded perkily. I don't know what got into me at this point. What I said next was so out of character for me that I'm still shocked I ever said it. "Yeah, I heard." I was standing in the doorway of my room and waited just long enough to close the door to see the look of understanding dawn on her face. I was freaked out that I had been inappropriate or creepy, so I waited in my room until I could tell she had left for the day. Part of me was proud for being bold in response to the teasing she had doled out earlier, and part of me was worried I was being a creepy older man. Later that evening the three of us met up for dinner again at a small restaurant down the street. There was a guitarist playing outside and the sound of his music filled the street. "I love the sound of Spanish guitar," Jenny said. "I'm sure you'd still be able to hear from the dorm, especially with how thin the walls apparently are," Grace replied with a smirk. Jenny shot her an embarrassed look and slapped her shoulder. "Okay." Apparently she had told Grace about what happened this morning. Grace simply laughed at her. "Oh, relax, it's normal." She turned to me. "If you ever hear any sounds from my room, just do your best to ignore it." Jenny and I broke out into laughter. Grace was more outgoing than either of us are, so it was nice to have someone break the ice and ease the tension I was worried about. When we got back to the dorms, it was late and we each headed straight to our rooms. I laid in bed, unable to sleep. I was undeniably turned on. I can't pretend like the two women I was sharing this space with weren't both SI. Although I had taken care of myself earlier in the day, I felt the urge again and began to touch myself. A few minutes later, I got a ding on my phone. It was Grace on the group chat. "Whichever of you is having some special time right now, please keep it down." Holy poop. My coworker keeps calling me misogynistic for no reason whatsoever and refuses to apologize for spreading nasty rumors about me. So I work for a non-profit, and when I started as leader of one of the program areas, the program had essentially collapsed after a leadership change and there was only one employee in the whole program. She was a new hire who started 3 months prior to my hiring, who acts as half admin to my team and half admin to the front desk. The new hire is not trained in the program area and is only there to provide clerical support. Her job is to stay at the front of the office as an overall administrative assistant, and when not occupied with that, she's meant to do clerical work for my team. I pay half her salary from my team budget. From the very first day, she has been extremely challenging to work with. As there had been no one on the team, there was no one to set boundaries with her, so she thought of herself as the lead of team. The team which was just herself. Once I started, she was immediately upset when I took work away. I recognized that and said I did indeed take work, as this is a team and we need to share responsibilities. She also struggles to multitask, so a lot of things needed to be done. She asked me to give her task lists each week and I've done that, but she always finds a way to make a simple task. Literally print signs was one task, a bigger problem. I answer her questions quickly and with logic. For example, she changed the font on the printed signs that I asked for, so I asked her to reprint them with a new font, but she refused to do so, telling me that the only reason I'm asking her to do it again is because I am a man who looks down on her as she is a woman in power. The hamster in my head was running on the wheel non-stop when she said that. Anyway, this is where I know I F up. I am very direct and will answer her questions without compliments, etc. I am not going to thank her for making a task more complicated than it needs to be. I will just ask for what I need, say thanks when it's done, and that's her job and my job. She often pouts or sulks when I ask her not to do something. I always make sure to explain that it's outside the scope of work and that it's not a bad idea, just not something we can pursue, but she seems to take it personally and often refers to me as misogynistic. I've been spending my time trying to figure out what worked for the program, what didn't, and what happened to cause the collapse of it originally. In the meantime, I've struggled to manage the employee as I'm not her direct supervisor, and when I tell her something, she goes to strictly other female employees to ask to double check that I'm right. Even if they are not her supervisor either. For context, I have experience and knowledge and a master's degree in this programming area. She will waste 3 other people's time only to get the same answers. I have also overheard her 3 times gossiping about me, mainly that she thinks I don't know anything and that I make choices too quickly, and also claiming that I probably hate women. During one of these times, I actively overheard her claiming that Sure has proof that I laid hands on my ex-wife as well as my children and that is why I can never see them. I have never had a wife, much less kids. I'm in a happy and committed relationship. Thankfully though, the people she's gossiping and complaining to are all just sounding boards, not really responding, which definitely helps as rumors like these could cost me everything. I've been speaking with my director about how to manage her. I've been begging for help and professional development. Frankly, managing her takes up far more time than I find worth it, and I've gotten to the point where I would like her removed from clerical work for my team. I have a new hire starting soon and I need to address the behavior so it doesn't create a bad team dynamic. Director recommended norming to create better boundaries within each role, so I tried that, but it turned into a major mess. She said she didn't feel heard. I apologized to her, genuinely, as I know my sense of urgency can make some people feel steamrolled sometimes, but I also told her that I feel like I can't trust her due to the gossip and the distrust she has had a part in creating. I asked that we apologize to each other, to which she refused and once again called me misogynistic, so I had to get the director to come in to mediate as I could not continue the meeting. I told the director that I can't move forward until we acknowledge the harmful behavior we've both contributed to. The director, a trained mediator, spent 20 minutes laying groundwork and I apologized, recognized the behavior that harmed her, promised forbearance, and assured that I'm genuinely trying to work on things. And she refused to acknowledge that she contributed negatively at all. The director ended the meeting because we weren't going to get anywhere, and now we have to go to mediation with HR tomorrow morning to create a working agreement. I've not said anything about the rumors yet and I'm wondering if I should address them or not. My wife became an abusive nightmare during a pregnancy which almost unalived her. We agreed to have no more children afterwards, but she is now demanding a second child. So my wife had an absolutely horrible pregnancy experience. She was in good health before the pregnancy, but during it, her normal mental state completely flipped and she became psychotic. She threw up almost every day for the first 2 trimesters, her legs and feet became shockingly swollen, she developed diabetes and high blood pressure, and her liver and kidneys became at risk of being damaged, on and off anemia issues, headaches every day as well as her hands losing normal function. All of this was despite working so hard with her doctors to mitigate the issues. She was put on many medications, given diet plans, low-stress stretching exercises. She had to stop working in the 3rd month because of how sick she became. I helped her all that I could. My entire life outside of work revolved around caring for her. I made all her meals, which became increasingly restrictive as more complications arose and as she was put on and taken off various medications. I bathed her, dressed her, cleaned up her vomit multiple times a week, changed so many bedsheets because she would sweat profusely or accidentally pee herself, cleaned her poo a few times, helped her wipe herself. At times I felt like a live-in nurse for a severely disabled person. It was awful and dirty, but I knew that I needed to do all of this for her and I wanted to do all I could to alleviate her suffering. But the worst part was the changes in her mental state. I could have done all of this with a smile on my face, if she did not become so cruel and violent during the pregnancy. She had previously never, ever, been abusive in any way. We were loving. When we had disagreements we never even raised our voices, we sat and talked. But that completely changed while she was pregnant. She yelled at me, swore at me, called me every slur known to man, threw things at me, hit me, told her parents I didn't love her, broke doors, shattered glasses and plates, threatened to unalive me and attacked me on several occasions. I'd serve her food in bed and she'd throw it either on the ground or at me if she didn't like it. After doing this for the 3rd time with oatmeal, I told her I wouldn't serve her oatmeal anymore because I was tired of having to spend hours on my knees digging dried oats out of the carpet. She exploded at that because oatmeal was one of the few things that didn't make her nauseous at the time, and threw a coffee mug at my face. This gave me a black eye. This kind of thing became constant and increasingly worse as time went on. After giving birth she stayed in the hospital for almost 2 weeks, at her doctor's request because she had so many complications. I took the baby home after the 1st week. She eventually came home and had some issues with postpartum depression, but thanks to the close observance of her doctor it was addressed relatively quickly and she was put on medication. So here we are, 2 years later, and the woman that she was while pregnant doesn't exist anymore. She is back to her old self, still have some lasting but minor physical issues from the pregnancy, but overall is healthy again, mentally and physically. I won't lie, it took me some time to love her again. After I took the baby home, there was a part of me that hoped she wouldn't come back from the hospital. I had no positive feelings for her at that time. I slept in a different room for 4 months afterward. We didn't go to counseling because we just didn't have the time. But eventually, after many talks, I realized that the woman she was while pregnant is gone. She is extremely sorry and regrets everything and can't explain why she did what she did, but is disgusted with who she was. And around our son's 1st birthday we agreed that she would never get pregnant again, due to how dangerous her pregnancy was for her and how abusive she became toward me. Our relationship is good and loving now and we both love our son very much, we're happy again. But, earlier this week, she mentioned she wouldn't mind having another kid in an offhanded comment. This obviously shocked me. We had agreed to never do it again. I didn't address the comment at the time, but over the next day I kept thinking about it and that night I asked her what she meant by that comment. She said she'd been thinking about it and she decided she wants to try for a daughter and suggests going off her birth control. I probably didn't handle this as well as I could have, but I just stared at her and said no. She said, "What do you mean no? You don't just get to say no." I said no, I'm not doing that again. We had an agreement, I will not even consider the thought of you being pregnant again. She started crying, saying it's not fair, we have a boy and she wants a girl too. I explained that we can't predict it will be a girl, what happens if it's another boy? And what happens if you die from another pregnancy? She wouldn't continue talking and just cried. I went to sleep in another room. That was Tuesday night. I've been sleeping in the living room and we basically haven't said more than 50 words to each other since then. My wife became an abusive nightmare during a pregnancy which almost unalived her. We agreed to have no more children afterwards, but she is now demanding a second child. So, wife and I were able to talk the day after, but unfortunately it didn't go very well. Before I left for work I hugged her, said I'm sorry for immediately saying no, and that I wanted to talk through it after work and hear all her thoughts about it. She agreed, we both said I love yous, and things seemed calm and positive as I left. That night I asked her why she changed her mind about another baby and just what she was thinking overall. She basically said she's getting older, her window for another baby is closing and it made her realize she wanted at least one more and that she also really wants a girl. I asked what happens if it's not a girl, she said in that case we would try again. I asked if she remembered the last pregnancy, how dangerous it was, how her kidneys were permanently damaged from it, how she was so sick that I had to basically be her live-in nurse, and that if she got pregnant again she could have total kidney failure and die. She said she's not worried because she knows God will protect her and will provide what we need. That really threw me off. I don't think I have ever heard her speak about a God like that at any point in our entire 6-year relationship. We are not religious people, I don't think we have even been in a church together, our wedding wasn't even in a church, we don't own a Bible. The last time I was in a church was my mom's funeral 9 years ago. After the God comment, I didn't know what to say, I was just shocked and I laid my head on the back of the couch and looked up at the ceiling. She asked what was wrong. I said that this is a lot, that she's saying the opposite of what we had previously agreed and I don't think I can change my mind on this because I don't want her to get deathly sick, and that I don't think I can go through the abuse again. She started ranting abuse? What abuse? You're accusing me of abuse? I reminded her of the coffee cup, throwing food on the floor, the name-calling, the slandering me to friends and family, and multiple other incidents. But she just kept talking over me. You really think that's who I am? I want another baby and this is what you think about? I said yes, it is what I think about because it's what happened last time. Everything just fell apart from there. She was yelling and crying, I couldn't get a word in. Calling me a bunch of names, saying that I don't love her, I can't understand what it's like for her, why can't I just give her this one thing? It's what God wants for us, it's God's plan. And on and on and on like this. I couldn't calm her down or convince her to go to bed, she was following me around the house and angry crying. One thing that really concerned me is she said that loving our son is much easier for me because he looks like me, that she can't see any of herself in him, and it isn't fair and that's why she wants a daughter. She made it sound like she doesn't love our son and could only love a daughter that looks like her. Finally all the noise woke our kid up and I told her I have to take him on a drive to get him back to sleep. I drove around for an hour, put him back to bed, and she was awake but locked in our room, so I slept in the living room again. She left early the next morning and I later found out she went to her mom's house. She was gone the whole day, so the kid and I had the day together. We eventually went to my older brother and sister-in-law's house and I kind of vented to them. I was very surprised to hear my sister-in-law say yeah we've been waiting for this and that it took longer than expected. My brother agreed. They basically said that they've seen this in her for as long as we've been together, and were concerned but unsurprised with her behavior during the pregnancy. And that the pregnancy let the genie out of the bottle, that who she was at that time is who she really is, they see her slipping more into that behavior every time we hang out and they're concerned. I told my wife that kiddo and I were staying at brother's last night, she never replied and that's where I still am today. I took a sick day today and probably will tomorrow. I think I might have to divorce my wife. I've been talking to my brother about it and mentioning marriage therapy but he said to be careful because therapy could just make my wife hide her ways just long enough to get pregnant again. He says she is very manipulative and has relived that I'm finally starting to see it. I really didn't think she was this kind of person, but I guess I've been willfully ignorant this whole time.